Hi, and welcome to the Swan Effect Mum's Coffee and Chat podcast. I'm Lynn, the host, and this week I'm talking to Patrice, and we're going to be talking about the importance of self-care and reducing the stigma of mental health in parenthood. Hi, Patrice, how are you today?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good. So, as you've probably noticed, we've got very different accents. So, where do you live at the moment? So, you're in America, I take it?
Yes, I am in Roswell, which is just outside Atlanta, Georgia.
Isn't there a
So
program called Roswell? I remember there was a TV show called Roswell, was that?
that was probably Roswell, New Mexico, about the alien.
Ah,
Yeah.
that's me thinking I might know where it is.
Yeah. Most people know more about Atlanta. We're the Delta hub, so we
Yeah.
have a huge airport here. We're kind of towards the south.
Oh,
South.
okay.
Yeah.
So we've managed to work out the timings at 8 o'clock at night here, and it's 3 o'clock there. Is that right in the
Yeah.
afternoon? Yeah,
Right. Yep.
we managed it. So who do you live with then, Patrice?
So I live with my husband. We've been married, let's see, going on 13 years this year. And I have two sons who are 6 and 9.
And tell us about your sons and how have you found the last 12 months as a family? So has in the UK we've been pretty strict with the lockdown. There's been a lot of staying at home and things like that. Have you all managed that okay over in the USA?
Yeah, we have. I mean, we've gone through some different phases here. We started out on that strict lockdown last March, and then it lasted probably a month or so, and then we were able to kind of go back out, but not everything was open. Now that vaccinations are being spread out everywhere, passed out, we're pretty much, I wouldn't say back to normal, but we are wearing masks. So this is our new normal. But yeah, my kids have handled it really well, honestly, surprisingly. You know, I do notice that they're affected by it, but I think that they're lucky to have each other, and they're pretty close in age, so they get along pretty well. I will say, so they were in March. They went to virtual school, and then they didn't start back until October. And around September, they were they were starting to get tired of each other, and we understood why, because they really hadn't spent a whole lot of time with anyone other than each other. So, and there's that normal sibling rivalry, but it was even more intensified because they were stuck inside with each other for so long.
I'm saying though, it's not that it's not normal, but in normal day to day, you're not with someone 24/7. Not even
Right.
your partner, your husband, your children. You're just not, for one reason or another. They go to school, or you go to work, or they go to clubs and things like that. It's hard, isn't it, to be with someone 24/7, even your bestest friend. It would be a
Yeah.
struggle for a long length of time, wouldn't it?
Yes, definitely.
So how has
Um,
the parenting styles been? Have you had to kind of adapt it then with it being homeschooling, or is it just nothing's really changed in that sense?
Um, yeah, I mean, at first they were virtual and, they were all online, but the teachers weren't ready for that. And so
No.
I was having to do so much of it. And it was hard because I was going through some depression and anxiety myself, and I just was not motivated to get them to do their work. But their teachers kept trying to reassure me, they were like, "I promise you're doing a good job. You're doing better than a lot of these parents that were working full time.
Yeah.
Luckily, I was not, so I was able to help them, and they were already in a good place academically, so they haven't missed out too much.
No.
But back to the parenting style, the one thing that I've really had to do is, I would say, lower my expectations,
Yeah,
like,
like right
and
down.
yeah, and give them more freedom to, I've really had to let go of that control, because we've all lost that this past year, not knowing what's going to happen day to day. But I've had to give up some of that with them and let them have more technology, just so I can get some writing done, or just get a break, or go get out of the house, because my husband's working full time from home. And I know that if I want to go for a jog or a walk or something, they're going to have to be occupied doing something. So, I used to try to give them an hour limit per day, but that's gone out the window.
You know what? I don't think you're the only parent to do
No.
that. I know for a fact there have been days where I've put on her favorite TV channel on loop because I just need to get things done. And I know if I put a certain program on, she won't move. She'll just be glued to the TV. And that's awful, I know. But like you said, I wasn't getting any help. Nobody was coming in because nobody could come into my house. I was on my own with a newborn baby and things. We do what we do just to get by, and I think a lot of parents can understand that. So you're a fellow blogger. So what is your blog called, and what do you write about on your blog?
So my blog is called Mom Life with P for Patrice. I write mostly just about the struggles of parenting. When I first became a mom, so I'm a former child therapist, and I always thought that I knew what I was talking about, and that it would just be easy, but it wasn't. And it took me like hearing so many other people saying that they were struggling in the same ways made me feel so much better. And so my goal with my blog is to help other moms see that they're not alone.
Yeah.
And so I have been kind of more so lately since the pandemic writing more about my anxiety and depression and trying to be more open and honest about that, because I know that just hearing that you're not the only one going through something, or it really takes away so much of that pressure to be perfect. And you don't feel as isolated when you hear that other people are going through the same thing.
I don't know why there's so much pressure to be perfect, because I don't know if any parent out there says you have to be perfect like me, because I generally don't think any parent thinks they're perfect. I think sometimes, and I'm talking from personal experience, you see somebody's Instagram account or social media and you think, wow, their children are so tidy. Their children look so happy. Their children, they do so much with their family. And it's hard. You end up thinking, oh, I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough for my, and that's how I was feeling. And I remember my mum saying to me, that's a snapshot that they've put on Instagram. That's a second of their day that they've put on that Instagram page. Maybe 2 seconds after that, the child was, threw something on the floor or drew on the wall or something. She says, not everyone's perfect. I found it really hard. And like you said, I wouldn't say I went to the doctors with it or anything, but I was struggling with my anxiety quite a lot during lockdown. And I think that's what I wanted to do as well, was make an honest mum account, where I said, you know what, I love my children, but it's hard, and I feel like I'm losing myself a little bit within that as well. And I'm just always trying to balance, Lynne and being mum, and I'm always trying to figure out how to do that best way possible, really. But so do you speak from experience on your blogs then? And if so, can you tell us a little bit about what the struggles you have gone through in your life? So when you say depression, anxiety, was that something that came about during lockdown? Or is that something that you've always had, but it, hyphenated during the lockdown?
Yeah, I mean, as long as I can remember, I've definitely had some depression and anxiety as a teenager. I had issues with confidence and, in high school, but it wasn't really, I've dealt with a lot of loss, and the one that probably affected me the most was my dad when I was in college. And so I think that was when I decided that I wanted to be a therapist, because I wanted to help other people, but I didn't really help myself.
Mm-hmm.
And until the lockdown, I really didn't accept that I could get help, even though I was a therapist. It was kind of like I said before, I just thought, well, I already know what I'm doing and I know what I need to do to feel better. I just need to do it, but it's not always that easy. And, I had tried going to see therapists before, just because like when I was in school, they said, you're never really going to understand how the client feels until you go to a therapist yourself. And, but I never really found one that I connected with. And, so actually, luckily for me, I found someone that I really like right before the pandemic. And so I'd already kind of built a relationship with her, and she continued seeing me virtually while we were on lockdown. And she encouraged me to start medication. And she said, this doesn't have to be something that you take forever, but just think of it more as like a training wheels, to kind of boost you so that you
Yeah.
can do those things that you've always known you had to do.
Mm.
And so, my biggest thing was just probably feeling like as a mom, like I was saying before, just like I had no control, and just starting a lot of the grief issues came up from my childhood, thinking that I didn't know who I was going to lose,
Yeah.
from the COVID. So, that was hard for me. But the therapist that I see does cognitive behavioral therapy. And so she teaches you how to, and I actually did this with kids when I was doing my own counseling. Um, Teaches you how to change your thoughts and how they're related to your behaviors. But before, first, you have to kind of understand what the thoughts are, the irrational thoughts that you're having that are leading to those, behaviors that you want to change. And so they kind of all go hand in hand. Um, but those are, and then I do blog about anxiety, just because, like I said, I remember as long as I can just kind of being a nervous kid and always like overthinking everything and maybe have a little bit of social anxiety. But no one talked about it, and I think now people are talking about it more.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
so yeah, and I think, I can relate to children who have anxiety, and I don't want to diagnose my own kids, but sometimes I do see the anxiety come out in them. You had asked about the pandemic and how it's affected them. They are doing pretty well, but there have been moments like when my youngest, my 6-year-old, went back to school. He at first didn't want to be in the other room without a grown up. And so like we even had to go into the bathroom with him. And at first, we were just so frustrated. We're like, what's going on? You know how to do that, why can't you just go? I'm in the middle of something and you don't want him to have an accident, but I finally kind of realized that he's gone back to school and there's all these new rules and parts to
It just
their
changes,
day.
doesn't it? Yeah.
So much change, and they don't know whether or not they're going to be back tomorrow, because last time they left in March, they didn't get to come back until October. So, not on top of that, like they're hearing us talking about things. We try to shelter them from all the bad
Yeah.
news. They hear it, so.
It got to the point where I remember thinking, I can't remember the last conversation I had with somebody that didn't involve the word COVID. I mean, talking months
Yes.
down the line, and I thought, I've got to stop this. And like yourself, I lost my dad during in July last year. He was, he was 77, but still my dad. And I was heavily pregnant. And I think that just added to the mix as well. It was just such a sad time. And then I remember my daughter wasn't sleeping very well. She was 2 then. And I said, she's crying in her sleep and things. And the health visitor said, just be wary of what you're saying around her, because even though she's only 2 and she doesn't seem like she's taking things in, they're like sponges, they just take it all in.
Right.
Myself, I wouldn't cry in front of her, but there'd be times, because he was poorly for a long time, that someone would phone me and I'd get upset and I'd walk out of the room. She would sense that. Or, like I said, there's lots of changes, lockdown, being with me 24/7 all of a sudden, my dad passing away, things like that. I think kids take on a lot more emotional baggage than I ever thought. But like you said, years ago, I wouldn't even have thought like that. I just wouldn't have done. So it is good because people are talking about it more, which means that we're thinking about it more and we're looking out for it more as well.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, you don't realize how much kids are feeling
No.
because they're so resilient. They're able to just kind of go on with their day and keep
Yeah.
playing and laughing and, but they are hearing it. It's like whenever they're babies and for the first like 2 years, they're not talking. And then all of a sudden they start talking and they're
Yeah.
just like, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, how did you even know that word? But they've heard you say it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Definitely. It's funny when they start saying things, you think, where'd you hear that from? And you realize it's something I would say. And I'm like, oh gosh, I'll have to be careful what I say now. She's definitely picking
Yeah.
up. So the next one here is, I've put down, when you wrote to me, you mentioned that you were passionate about the importance of taking care of ourselves. Can you go into a little bit more detail about that and explain why self-care is so important? Now, just before I say this, what I tend to do on my podcast so far is, the last question normally I'll say is to somebody, to a parent, what do you do for self-care? And a lot of it's been exercise. One person said, I like to go in the bath and watch TikTok videos. Another person said they like to have a whiskey on a Friday night and watch an Instagram live that goes on every week. So a lot of people do different things, but to me, it realized that that's what they do to switch off. But what's the importance of it, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that moms especially, I mean, not that dads aren't important, but mom is who our kids are always looking to for help. You know, it's I need a snack, I need a drink, mommy, I hurt my toe, you know, and even if dad is in the room with them, they're gonna search out for us. And so I always think of that metaphor, you can't pour from an empty cup, you know, and so you've got to take care of yourself before you can take care of your family. And there's the other metaphor about the oxygen mask on the plane. You know, they tell you when you're on a plane, if you're a parent, to get your own oxygen mask first before you try to get your child's on, because if you run out of oxygen, you can't breathe, then you can't help them get theirs on. So you can't take care of them. You physically can't if you're not getting enough oxygen. And, you know, I think about like when you're stressed out, your brain, most people don't know this, but your brain is not getting enough oxygen. And that's part of the reason why you're stressed. And so that's why deep breathing helps so much. But if you're just going from point A to B all day long and you're not like pausing, especially nowadays that everyone is on technology and that we're constantly on, we're always on our phones, we're always, you know, checking in with somebody. Even if you're just scrolling, your mind is not stopping and you're not consciously taking deep breaths and making sure that you're getting enough oxygen. And, you know, especially for stay-at-home moms where you're not getting that time to yourself, I think it's just so important that you really have to schedule it. And, you know, you talked about all the different things that people do for self-care, sorry. Yeah, so it just depends on what works for you. You know, for some people it might be watching a video or taking a bath, but for other people it's just maybe it's just talking kindly to yourself or saying I'm okay, I'm going to be okay, you know, or just having confidence, or taking the time to say I'm beautiful, or you know, I'm comfortable in my own skin. Like those things are free and they're hard. Those are harder to do sometimes, but you know, self-care can mean so many different things. And I'm learning that as I get older, like even if it's just 5 minutes, that's taking like 5 deep breaths. That's more than I would have if I hadn't done it.
Yeah.
So
Talking about that, it's strange. I got an iWatch for Christmas a couple of years ago, and I had this app and it kept telling me to breathe.
Yeah.
Why is it telling me to breathe? And it's like you said, it was, I think they know that it went off every hour or every something, just and they had rings and you went breathe out,
Yes.
breathe in, and the ring went, oh, it was so hypnotic, it was lovely. And I thought, that's when I thought, oh yeah, I don't really think to do that very often.
No.
And I've done mindfulness and things like that. I tend to do those things when I'm feeling anxious. So I don't really ever tend to do it just for self-care reasons. So maybe I should really do that. Just don't need to do it.
I think that sometimes for somebody who has had depression, anxiety to the point where I just like don't want to get out of bed, like it's better to do those things before you get to that point, you know, when you are feeling good. And then that's why I try to make it a habit, like exercise or do something for myself every day. And like I said, it might not be a whole hour, or my kids might even be in the room, but I'm just kind of going away for a minute in my mind and just taking some deep breaths, you know.
So it's more prevention rather than cure, isn't it? Definitely.
Yes, because they don't really work when I get to the point where I'm just, I mean, they do help, but they don't help as much when I'm just already
your mind is so cloudy, isn't it? And you just can't concentrate on something like that. So that's a really good advice. You also mentioned that you're passionate about reducing the stigma of mental health. I believe mental health is being talked about more than ever now, which we've discussed, especially as more people are being honest online about their struggles, myself included. I've only just recently started talking about my anxiety in the last few weeks, really. I've lived with it on and off for 10 years. And although I can speak openly on this account, on the Swan Effect Mum account, I still feel embarrassed to be completely open to others in my real life. So I know that people do listen to this and my blog. I don't know how many people I know that actually read it. I don't really put myself out there on my personal pages. Again, that's my anxiety that plays into that. I don't want to be rejected. I don't want to bump into someone in the shop and them laugh at me about it, or, it's just a confidence thing. So how do you think we can, as a society, improve this? So I'm not saying I want to walk around with a card saying I have anxiety, because that isn't me. It isn't all me. It's just a little tiny part of my personality that sometimes creeps in. And, and my partner knows now how to help me deal with that. But how do we talk to real people, not just online, to the real people in our lives?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me too. And I really just started over the past year or two talking about it more openly. And I still sometimes only do it on my blog, like you
Yes.
said. But I think it's been really eye-opening for me when I do share those posts, how many people say me too.
Yeah.
Oh, I've felt that way too. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing, because that makes me feel better that I'm not the only one. And so I think just the more you talk about it, and I'm lucky that I have a few good friends who I know struggle with some of the same
Right.
things. And it's easy for us to talk about it, but the more you talk about it, the easier it gets. So
Yeah.
find that one friend that you can talk to, and then it's almost like you're opening up that Pandora's box. Well, you know what I mean? Like once
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
open it up, it's easier to talk about it. And
Yeah.
the more times you have a good experience with somebody who still accepts you for who you are, the more you'll realize that you can talk about it more. And I think that the more people talk about it, the more we are going to reduce the stigma. And I think also the policymakers and the leaders of our countries need to talk about it more, and just people who are in power or people who are celebrities are starting to talk about it more. But the more that they do, the more that will normalize it for us.
Yeah.
If you can see that somebody is still successful even though they might have bipolar disorder or whatever, then that will help you to see, okay, if I say this, then people aren't going to think that I'm not good enough, or they're
Yeah.
not going to so that's my it's always going to be something that is there, especially for those of us who have anxiety, because that's just what our brains do.
Yeah.
We overthink things. But I think the more we can talk about it, the more the stigma will kind of be less and less.
Yeah, I do get that. I think for me, I don't know, I think maybe if I opened up more to friends and family here, as in physical people, you don't know, sometimes they might turn around and say, do you know what, Lynn? I think because I think it would shock a lot of people that because anxiety, people think, but you're so confident. And I'm like, there's confidence and then there's acting confident. And I do a lot of acting confidence. So people say, oh, you go for interviews and you're really confident. No, I'm terrified before I open that door. Like I'm physically shaking inside. But then I think I want this job. So I'm going to have to act like I know what I'm doing and that I'm not scared. I just act not scared quite a lot. I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know, but it works for me. And that's how I get through it. And I think I just don't want people to go, no, you haven't, Lynn. No, because they think they know who I am. And I'm going, no, I know who I am. And I'm trying to tell you. And it just be all complicated. But I think
Right.
one day, once these podcasts become more and more popular, I might go, do you know what, guys? I've been doing this for about 6 months now. If anyone's interested in listening to them, then go ahead. And if they want to listen, then they'll find out themselves. And it might open up, like you say, some doors. And some people might come to me and say, I didn't know you had that, Lynn. That's what I struggle with. Or, I struggled during lockdown with my children. You don't know, suppose, if you reach out, if you're honest, people might be honest back to you.
Right, exactly. And And the other thing is you can share just a little bit that's not super
Yeah.
personal. Like you could share that example that you just did, and that's something that is so many people have, I think. Like so many people would say that they've been nervous before an interview,
Of course, yeah.
um but I mean, you know what I mean? Like you can just share to the point where you're not giving your deepest, darkest secrets,
Yeah.
the things that you would only share with your therapist or whoever, but you're still sharing a little bit. And the more you work through that discomfort, the easier it gets, I think, like I said. But, you know, if you don't say it, then you'll never know. And you could make a friend, or you could have a friend that is going through some of the same things, and then you'll have that extra bond like I have now. And if I had never shared, they would have never known. And now we help each other out. And if we have like a code word where we'll say, I'm on the struggle bus, and then they know that they need to tell me to reach out to
Yeah.
my people, and they need to invite me to come and go for a walk or something. So,
Yeah.
it helps with your support network the more you talk about it too.
Yeah. And sometimes, once you explain it to somebody, you don't necessarily want to talk about it every single time. But you say you can have a code word, and then they text you, do you want to come out for a walk? Yeah, great. You don't necessarily just have to talk about why you're feeling anxious that week. It's just, can you just get me out of this situation I'm in now, just for a change of scenery, go for a walk? Yeah, exactly. So what advice would you give to parents that are feeling low, stressed, anxious, or depressed, or all of the above during these isolating times? And also, even though I haven't added this on, sorry, so isolating times, but also people that are feeling anxious about coming out of the isolating times, like we're starting to open up now. And I know a lot of people have said, wow, I went to the park today and there were so many people there, I felt a bit overwhelmed. And these are people that beforehand would never have said something like that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things, but I think, for one thing, the one thing that I always say is, you hear this a lot. It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. It's okay to not be okay, but that doesn't mean you have to suffer.
Yeah.
Like there is help out there. And just by talking to one person, it gets that off of your chest and gets you out of your head. And you can usually like figure out one step forward to take to get through it. Because I mean, for me, when I'm stressed out or anxious, my thoughts are going like 90 miles an hour, and I'm just like making myself even worse. But once I say it out loud, it's like, oh, it's not really that bad, like, so just reach out to somebody. And if you don't have anybody, then find someone. Like, I'm always here. I always say, even if you don't know me, you can reach out to me, and I'll help you.
Yeah.
Even if I'm on the other side of the country, I can help you figure out like how to get help. And don't stop. Like if you tell one person and they don't necessarily, if you don't feel better, tell someone else, because maybe they're just overwhelmed too and they don't know what to say. And it doesn't mean they don't care, but maybe in that moment they didn't know what to say. And as far as going back out into the world, like after the pandemic, I remember that first time I went somewhere. I think it was just the grocery store, because for several months my husband was the only one going, and I would write him a list every time. But the first time I went, I just remember feeling so anxious. But the more I did it, it's just like the other things we're talking about, the more I did it, the more I felt more comfortable. And I also would say that almost everyone has had some sort of anxiety about what we've experienced over the past year,
absolutely, definitely.
different levels. So sometimes that helps too, just to know like, okay, this nervousness that I'm feeling right now is normal, but I'm going to get through it, and it's going to get easier. And as long as you're like doing the things that you're supposed to be doing to be careful. I mean, I'm not going to say that you won't get sick or whatever, but you're not going to be mentally healthy if you're staying home forever.
No.
And so your mental health is just as important as your physical health. And, sometimes
Absolutely.
even more.
Definitely. Gosh, yeah, definitely. So if a parent listening is worried about their child's mental health as a result of this lockdown and pandemic, what suggestions can you give to help them communicate and get their child to open up?
So there's one activity that I do with my kids a lot, and it's on my blog. I think the name of the blog about it is about dealing with losing a pet, because I did it with them when we lost our dog well, it was last year. But it's called Color Your Heart, and it's so simple. All you do is you draw a heart, and then you write down the feelings that you're having, and you color in next to the feeling what color that feeling is. So, like, for example, mad or angry might be red,
Okay.
happy might be yellow, but it's whatever you think. So it's whatever your child thinks. And then you fill in the heart to show what feelings you're having. So if I'm really happy right now, I'm going to put in a bunch of yellow or whatever color I made for happy. And then when you look at the heart, it'll show someone else what you're feeling. And it, as they're doing it, I love to do art, and so I'm not really a good artist, but I'm learning as I'm getting older
Yeah.
that, it's not about the product, it's more about the process.
Mm.
But I do art with my kids a lot because it helps them relax, and they forget that they don't realize that I'm asking them questions or that I'm trying to get them to talk about their feelings. They're just kind of drawing or whatever. Another one that I did with my kids is I said, what if you could if your worries were a monster, what would they look like? And so my oldest son, he didn't want me to share it, but he drew something that I had no idea that he was worried about, and it was related to how we had lost our dog. um, and then he just told me about it, and he got really upset, but it was a good thing because
Yeah.
I didn't know. And then my younger son, he didn't feel like drawing it at the time, but he eventually told me that he was afraid of bugs. And then we just kind of like, I was like, huh, okay. And the more we talked about it, like later on in the day, I said, well, Taekwondo, you can karate chop that bug, or you can kick it or whatever. You're so much bigger than it. And I tried to empower him
Yeah.
to face his fears. But I think, you know, um, being in the pandemic and just, well, one thing I would say is take some time to just be with your kid and play with them. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so hard to do, but children's words are their children talk, they communicate through their play to a certain age. And just go in the playroom with them, put your phone away and all your distractions, set a timer for 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be long, and just pay attention to them.
Mm.
And you will see more than you realize, than you expect. For older kids, it's harder because, they're not playing. Um, there, it just depends on the relationship. And I would say maybe there's another adult in their life that you can kind of
Yeah.
suggest call to check on them,
Mm.
or you can have them write in a journal, or they can also color, or draw a picture of how they're feeling, and they might not want you to look at it, but that's okay. Like, they're still getting it out.
Yeah.
um, if you really don't know what to do, I always say the first point of contact would be your doctor, your child's doctor, the pediatrician is what we call it here. But
Mm.
because they can tell you whether or not what your child is experiencing is normal.
Mm.
And then if they think, they might need more help, then they can usually give you some resources. So
That's it. Because I mean, having some anxiety, having some worries, having some quiet time and things like that, it's normal. Everybody has that. So it's not a case of going, oh gosh, I think my child's got these issues. It's just, like you said, sitting down, playing with them, getting them to open up while they're playing, to the point where they don't even realize that they're opening up, like they don't even know they're talking about things. They're just,
right.
the subconscious is coming out, I suppose. And then you can make that judgment yourself. It could be something that, oh, somebody in the park today was mean to me, and they go, well, that's fine. You can start giving them, and that could have really worried them that day, but you give them a bit of advice and they're fine again, aren't they?
Right, exactly. And sometimes just knowing, like, that somebody heard you, and that
Yeah,
like, you were able to say how you felt can really relieve a
that
lot of
helps.
that.
Yeah, that someone's listened to you.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, exactly. So my last question, you write a lot of blogs giving advice to parents, but which would you choose as the #1 blog to visit for parents if they were to visit your website? What's the best piece of advice you provide in your honest opinion? Hard, this one, isn't it? Because I
That
don't
is
know
a
which
really
one
hard
I
one.
choose.
I know. I'm thinking of so many different ones, but for me, the one that I wrote recently called My Anxious Life, where I talk about my anxiety,
Mm,
that one resonated, it seems like, with the most people.
yeah.
And, I had so many people that came to me after that and said, wow, I didn't know that you had anxiety. And, I've had some struggles with that too. And then they were able to see like they weren't the only one. And I just kind of talk about like how that changed when I became a mom and a lot of the things that I worry about. And I also talked a little bit about some of the things that I, do to help whenever I'm starting to feel anxious. So I would say that that would probably be my #1. But, there's just it all depends on what you're looking for. Um,
Yeah,
so
what's the resonate with you? So I tell you, let's just do another plug then. So if anyone wants to look at your website and your blog or to talk to you, which I'm sure you're quite happy, if someone's listening now and feels like they want to have a chat with you or just message you, is that okay?
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So my blog is Mom Life with P, and then if you go on my website, I do have a contact me field on there. And then on my social media, it's all Mom Life with P. So you can find me on Instagram or Facebook also.
And that's just the letter P, isn't it? Mum Life
Yes.
P. Yeah. So that's fine. If
Yeah.
anyone wants to reach out to Patrice, then please do. I think every guest I have every week has said, they're quite happy for people to message them and talk. And as we said, there's people that feel like maybe they can't talk to friends, family, face to face. They're not quite there yet with the confidence to do that. Then, reach out to people like ourselves. That's why I joined the mum accounts, I suppose, the mum community online. There's
Yeah.
always someone going through what you're going through, and there's always someone that you can support as well, which makes you feel better because you've given advice to someone as well. It works both ways,
Right.
I think, definitely.
Yes, it really does. I mean, that's one of the things I talk about in my blog is helping other people. That has always been like energizing for me.
You feel
Just
useful. You feel
yeah,
useful, and everyone wants to feel useful. It's a
right.
nice thing. You've made someone's day. They've said thank you so much. I thought it was just me, and you say no, definitely not. I've made some friends by doing this. It's
Yes,
just
me
lovely. So
too.
go online and speak to somebody. If you don't want to speak to either of us, just reach out to somebody. People are so lovely online. And that's why they're there, because they want to get themselves out there. They want people to speak to them, and they want to share their experiences. So please don't feel like you're invading their privacy, because you're not. The whole purpose is they've got public accounts because they want to help people, for sure, I think.
Right, absolutely. And you never know if I've been through something and found something that helped me that you hadn't thought of. And so I can kind of just say, well, when that happened to me, we did this and it helped. So that's another reason to reach out, because if you don't, then you won't know.
No. And there's nothing wrong with struggling, whether
No.
in parenthood, because we're talking about that now, motherhood or fatherhood. There's no shame in it whatsoever. And that's the main point I think we're getting across this week, is that just open up to somebody and speak to them, because more times than not, people are going to be struggling just as much, or have been throughout, especially in the last 12 months. I think everyone, like you said, has experienced some sort of anxiety, depression, whatever. I think everyone I've spoke to has been affected some way or another.
Right. And another thing to think about is if somebody really cares about you, if they're a real friend, they're not going to judge you and they're going to want you to talk to them because they don't want you to suffer. And
No.
so that's kind of a way to work through some of that anxiety about reaching out.
Definitely, definitely. Oh, well, it's been really interesting talking to you, Patrice. Thank you so much for chatting.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
No, it's
really
been
enjoyed it.
lovely. I'm so glad. I still can't believe I've got people from abroad that have messaged to be on my little podcast, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love how this brings us all together.
yeah,
It's really
absolutely. And this is what I mean. Absolutely. Put yourself out there and people will get in touch. And, that's how you make new friends and you meet people and you learn all these different new topics that I cover every week. It's just been so interesting. But yeah, if anyone wants to read your blog, then obviously we've given you the details there. If you want to contact myself about anything, then please do via my website as well. And yeah, we'll be in touch back with you as soon as we can. I hope this has been interesting for everyone listening. And please, obviously, do get in touch if there's any questions. You're not alone, and many people are going from what you're going through. And if we can help, we will. Thanks very much. And we'll speak soon, Patrice. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, now, bye.